Security. Someone call security right now. She's probably stealing something. The voice cut through the quiet like a slap, loud, sharp, and meant to humiliate. Every head in the boutique turned. People paused mid-conversation. A woman in a green coat dropped the silk scarf she was admiring. Silence fell. Not the calm kind, but the kind soaked in tension. The kind that made people stare, but say nothing. The target of that voice? A 16-year-old black girl who hadn't said a single word, hadn't done a single thing wrong, except walk into a store where someone believed she didn't belong. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She stood still, her posture strong, even as her heart thudded in her chest. Her name was Maya Johnson, and in less than 10 minutes, the entire store, every customer, every employee, would find out the hard way who she really was. But right now, no one knew. All they saw was what they thought they saw. A young girl alone in an expensive boutique, holding a dress that looked like it cost more than some people's rent. The woman shouting was Karen Whitmore, a regular at this boutique and the type who made sure everyone knew it. Her voice was high-pitched, trembling with a fake kind of fear, the kind people use when they want to look like the victim, when in truth, they're the ones doing the damage. I saw her acting weird, Karen barked, pointing straight at Maya as if she was something dangerous. She doesn't look like she belongs here. I bet she slipped something in her bag. Maya blinked slowly. She had heard this kind of accusation before. Not always out loud, but in the way people looked at her, followed her around stores, gripped their purses a little tighter when she walked past. But this time, it was louder, public, cruel. She had only come in to find a dress for the upcoming charity gala, an event hosted by her father's company. She had told him she wanted to pick something on her own this year. He smiled and handed her his card. "Go get something that makes you feel like you own the room," he said. So she did, until someone decided she didn't deserve to be in the room at all. The boutique was quiet except for Karen's ranting and Maya's slow, steady breathing. She looked at the dress in her hand, midnight blue, elegant, floor length, with tiny crystals stitched into the fabric like stars. She had fallen in love with it at first glance. She clutched it gently, not out of fear, but because it reminded her of who she was. Calm, bright, powerful in ways people didn't always see. "I didn't take anything," Maya said quietly. Her voice was even, controlled. But her eyes burned. Karen snorted. "Oh, please. Girls like you always say that. Girls like you." Those words hung in the air like smoke. One of the employees, a young woman named Olivia, walked over. Her steps were hesitant. She had only been working at the boutique for 2 months and didn't recognize Maya. She looked at Karen, then at Maya, clearly unsure of what to do. "What's going on here?" Olivia asked, trying to sound professional. Karen didn't hesitate. "She's been sneaking around the racks. I saw her acting suspicious. Look at her. She doesn't fit in here." "I'm here to shop," Maya said. Her voice didn't rise. She didn't plead. She simply stated a fact. Karen took a step closer. "Sure you are. And I'm supposed to believe that?" Maya didn't look away. "I don't care what you believe. I'm allowed to be here." Karen scoffed loudly, turning to the small group of onlookers gathering near the jewelry display. "She's probably planning to run out with that dress. Just look at her," the other customers whispered among themselves. Some looked uncomfortable. Others pretended not to hear. No one stepped in. Maya took a deep breath, her fingers tightening slightly around the hanger. Her voice was calm, but the weight in it was unmistakable. If you think I stole something, she said, then check my bag. Karen blinked, surprised that Maya wasn't panicking. Olivia looked unsure. Only if you're okay with it, she said nervously. Maya nodded. She handed Olivia her purse. Everyone watched. Olivia opened the bag slowly, checking carefully inside. After a moment, she looked up, her face pale. There's nothing in here, she said. Karen crossed her arms. Maybe she already hid it. People like her always have tricks. People like me? Maya asked, her tone sharpening just a little. Say what you really mean. Karen smiled coldly. I already did. Maya looked at Olivia, who now seemed deeply uncomfortable. Is this really how you treat your customers? She asked. Olivia opened her mouth, then closed it again. Karen waved her hand. Honestly, I don't care who she is. Someone needs to protect this place. And that dress she's holding? I doubt she can even afford it. Maya was quiet for a second. Then slowly, she reached into her pocket. Not for a receipt. Not for her father's credit card. For her phone. She dialed the number and lifted it to her ear, her gaze still locked on Karen. Dad, she said. Can you come to the boutique? Something happened. Karen rolled her eyes. Calling your daddy now? What's he gonna do? Yell at me in a hoodie? Maya didn't reply. She ended the call and slipped the phone back into her pocket. What Karen didn't know, and what every person in that store was about to find out, was that the man Maya just called was not just her father. He was the CEO of the very company that owned the boutique, and he was already on his way. The call had ended, but the silence in the store hadn't. The air felt thick, heavy, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for something they couldn't name. Maya stood exactly where she had before, still holding the navy blue gown, still calm, still composed. But something had shifted. It wasn't just the tension or the stares. It was her. She had stopped playing along with the quiet, polite endurance. She had drawn a line. Karen didn't notice it. Or maybe she did and chose to ignore it, the way people like her always did. Her smirk was back, curling at the corners of her mouth like she had already won. Calling your daddy, Karen scoffed under her breath, loud enough for others to hear. Probably some lawyer or high school football coach. Let's see if he can afford that dress. Maya didn't respond. She didn't need to, because she knew who was coming, and he wasn't coming to yell. He didn't need to raise his voice. Her father's presence alone was louder than anything Karen had said. Olivia, the young store manager, stood stiff behind the checkout counter. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, but she wasn't typing anything. Her eyes kept flicking from Maya to Karen, unsure of who to support, afraid of getting it wrong. She had never been trained for this. She had never expected it. Karen turned to Olivia with a dramatic sigh. I hope you understand. I'm just trying to help, she said in a voice that dripped with self-importance. Stores like this have to be protected. You let the wrong kind of people in and, she shrugged. Before you know it, things go missing. The wrong kind of people? Maya repeated, her voice soft but steady. Karen looked at her like she'd forgotten she was still there. Don't twist my words, she snapped. I'm not twisting them, Maya replied, locking eyes with her. You said exactly what you meant. More customers were watching now. One woman near the shoe wall looked away when Maya glanced at her. A man holding a suit jacket shifted awkwardly. No one said a word. They just watched it happen. Karen turned back to Olivia, waving her hand dismissively at Maya. Why is she still here? Why haven't you asked her to leave? Olivia opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Maya spoke before she could. I'm not leaving. Karen raised her eyebrows. Excuse me? I said I'm not leaving, Maya repeated, her voice louder now, filling the room. I didn't steal anything. I didn't touch anyone. I came here to buy a dress, just like you. You're causing a scene, Karen hissed. You're making everyone uncomfortable. No, Maya said, stepping forward, her voice unwavering. You made this uncomfortable. You embarrassed me. You accused me. And you tried to humiliate me in front of a room full of strangers. But I'm not going anywhere. The silence was no longer awkward. It was electric, heavy, real. Then came the sound that would change everything. The low rumble of an engine just outside. It was deep and smooth, like thunder rolling across pavement. Karen glanced toward the storefront windows. A black SUV was pulling up to the curb, sleek and spotless, its tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. Probably her ride, Karen muttered, smirking. Let's see who we've got. The car came to a quiet stop. The driver's door opened first. A large man stepped out in a fitted black suit, sunglasses on, earpiece in. He looked like someone who didn't talk unless he had to. Someone trained to protect. The boutique fell into total silence. Then the back door opened. A polished black shoe hit the ground first. Then the man himself stepped out. Charles Johnson. He didn't walk. He moved. Each step was measured, confident, deliberate. His suit was tailored, his posture straight, his face calm but unreadable. He didn't look like a father coming to pick up his daughter. He looked like the man who owned the building and everyone inside it. And in a way, he did. Karen blinked rapidly as he entered. Is that? She started, but didn't finish. He walked past the racks of silk gowns, the handbags locked behind glass, the frozen customers, straight toward Maya. He didn't look left or right. He didn't need to. Maya stood there waiting, her chin high, her face steady. Are you okay? He asked her gently. She nodded. Yeah, I'm fine now. Karen took a step forward. Sir, hello. I think there's been some misunderstanding. He held up a hand, and the whole room went quiet. I'm going to ask once, he said, his voice calm, but razor sharp. Who accused my daughter of stealing? The color drained from Karen's face. I didn't accuse. She said you did, he interrupted, nodding at Maya. And I believe her. So, again, who made the accusation? Karen swallowed hard. I just thought something was wrong. She was acting strangely. She was shopping, he said flatly. That's not strange. That's exactly what she was supposed to be doing. Karen's eyes darted toward Olivia, desperate for backup. But Olivia didn't move. Charles turned to her next. You're the store manager? She nodded quickly. Yes, sir. And you allowed this to happen? I didn't know who she was, Olivia blurted out. Charles looked at her for a long moment. She shouldn't have to tell you who she is to be treated with respect. Olivia looked down at the floor. Karen opened her mouth again. I swear, I didn't mean any harm. I just wanted to protect the store's reputation. Charles turned toward her slowly. His voice dropped low. And instead, you damaged it. You embarrassed an innocent young woman. You brought shame to a place meant to be safe. That's what you protected. Karen had nothing left to say. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Maya stood silently, her father beside her now. She didn't need to speak. Her presence said enough. Her strength said enough. And the woman who had once raised her voice so easily had finally fallen completely silent. Karen stood frozen, her confidence shattered like glass on marble. once proud look on her face was gone. Her arms, which had been confidently folded across her chest, now hung awkwardly at her sides. It was as if the weight of her own words had finally settled on her shoulders, and it was too heavy to bear. Charles Johnson didn't move. He didn't need to. His stillness carried more power than all of Karen's noise ever could. He glanced at the boutique's walls, the racks lined with luxury clothing, the shelves stocked with shoes and handbags carrying four-figure price tags. Then his eyes settled on Olivia, the store manager, who stood stiff as a mannequin. "You let this happen," he said, voice even and measured. "And you didn't stop it. You watched someone be humiliated. For shopping." Olivia tried to speak. I wasn't sure what to do. I mean, Mrs. Whitmore is a regular customer and my daughter isn't?" Charles cut in, his tone sharpening. "This boutique is under the Johnson Luxury Group, which means I own this place. And every single customer who walks in here, no matter how they look, is to be treated with respect. No exceptions." Gasps rippled through the boutique. Customers began to murmur again, whispers floating across the room like drifting smoke. The same people who had watched in silence earlier were now turning to each other in disbelief. Some of them glanced apologetically at Maya. Others lowered their eyes, suddenly ashamed of their own inaction. Karen's face went pale. You own the boutique?" she asked, voice shaking. Charles didn't bother answering her directly. He turned to Maya instead. "Did she touch you?" he asked softly. "Did she put her hands on you?" "No," Maya said. "She didn't need to. Her words were loud enough." That answer hit harder than a slap. Karen flinched, but Charles stayed calm. He turned back to Karen, his eyes cold now. "Let me be very clear. I don't care how many times you've shopped here. I don't care how much you've spent. You verbally attacked a young girl based on the way she looks. You accused her of stealing without any evidence. And when you were proven wrong, you kept pushing." "I made a mistake," Karen said quickly. I was trying to protect the store." "You were protecting your own prejudice," he said, interrupting her without raising his voice. "You weren't concerned about the store. You were concerned about someone like her being in a space you think belongs to people like you." Karen stepped back. "Please, I didn't know. I didn't mean to offend anyone." "You did offend," he replied coolly. "And you did know. You knew what you were doing the moment you raised your voice." Maya looked on quietly, standing beside her father. She wasn't just watching her dad defend her. She was watching someone finally say out loud what so many others ignored. Charles took another step forward, just enough to make Karen feel the pressure. "You will not speak to my daughter again," he said firmly, "and you will not return to this store." Karen's eyes widened. "Wait, what? Are you banning me?" "You're no longer welcome here," Charles said. "Or in any store under the Johnson luxury brand." Karen's mouth opened in disbelief. She looked around the store, as if hoping someone would step forward to defend her. No one did. Not even Olivia. The customers she once intimidated were now strangers, silent and distant. Charles turned to Olivia. "You'll walk her to the door. After that, I expect a full report sent to my office. And a written apology, addressed to Maya." Olivia nodded quickly, her hands trembling. Karen tried one last time. "Please, this is all just a big misunderstanding. I shop here all the time. And now you won't," Charles said, turning away from her for good. The decision was final. Olivia stepped forward. "Mrs. Whitmore, please come with me." Karen didn't argue. She turned slowly, her heels clicking awkwardly across the polished floor. Every step sounded heavier than the last. She didn't glance back. She couldn't. The boutique door chimed as it opened, and then shut behind her. The room was still. Charles looked around, his presence commanding even in silence. To the customers, he said, "You all saw what happened, and if you stood by and said nothing, I hope next time you don't." A beat of silence followed. Some of the customers nodded. Others looked away, ashamed. Then he turned to the store staff. "Training starts this week. Every employee in this store will be taught how to handle a situation like this, with fairness, decency, and respect. Understood?" The team nodded quickly. Finally, he looked back at Maya. She had stood tall through all of it. But now, with the tension lifting, her shoulders relaxed just a little. "You okay?" he asked again, his voice quieter now, warmer. She nodded. "Yeah, better now. I'm proud of you," he said, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You didn't let her shake you. You held your head high." Maya smiled faintly. "I was scared," she admitted. He smiled back. "Courage isn't about not being scared. It's about standing tall anyway." The boutique was still watching, still processing. But Maya didn't care. She had done nothing wrong, and now the room knew it. She turned toward the mirror, dress still in hand, and looked at her reflection. For the first time all day, she let herself smile. Not because she felt pretty in the dress, but because she had stood up for herself and hadn't backed down. Charles stepped beside her. "Is that the one?" She looked at him, nodded. "Yeah, it's the one." "Then it's yours," he said. "And no one in this world has the right to make you feel like you don't deserve it." The door slammed shut behind Karen, but her hate still lingered in the air like a bad smell. No one spoke. Not the customers who had watched everything unfold like it was a reality show. Not the staff who had stayed frozen, waiting to see which way the wind would blow. Not even Maya. She just stood there, still, quiet, but not broken. Inside her, though, a storm was brewing. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. But every beat of her heart felt like thunder. How many times had she been made to feel like a stranger in places she had every right to be? How many times had she swallowed her anger just to keep the peace? Not today. Today, her father had shown up, not just as a parent, but as a force, as proof that dignity still mattered, that power didn't always look like cruelty, and that being quiet didn't mean being weak. But the damage had been done, and Maya wasn't sure if she could shake it off like everyone expected her to. Charles glanced around the boutique, letting the silence stretch. His voice didn't need volume, it had weight, and when he finally spoke again, it landed like stone. "Let me tell you all something," he said, turning to the stunned faces, watching from behind clothing racks and mirrored walls. "What happened here today isn't rare. It's just usually hidden, quiet, brushed off. But not this time." He pointed to the empty space where Karen had stood just minutes ago. That woman didn't see a customer. She saw a threat. Why? Because my daughter has a dark skin and confidence? Because she dares to shop in the same stores you do? No one answered, but he didn't expect them to. He looked at Olivia next. She was still standing behind the counter, her face pale, her posture stiff. "You froze," he said simply. "You let her take control. You forgot your role." "I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson," Olivia said quickly. "I truly am." I panicked. "I'm not asking for an apology," he interrupted. "I'm asking for accountability." Her eyes dropped to the counter. A nearby shopper, A woman in a green coat stepped forward slowly. She looked toward Maya, her voice small but sincere. "I'm sorry too," she said. "I heard it all. I should have said something. I didn't. But I will next time." Maya looked at her, nodded once, then looked away. She appreciated the words, but she knew too well how often those promises faded. Charles turned to the woman and spoke, not in anger but with firm honesty. "If you're silent when it matters, you're not neutral. You're part of the problem." Another pause, another beat of silence thick with realization. And then Maya took a breath, a deep one, the kind that feels like you're pulling yourself back into your own body after the world tried to push you out of it. She looked at her dad, her voice quiet. "Can we go now?" Charles nodded. "We can." But as they turned to leave, a voice stopped them. Olivia's. "Wait," she said, stepping out from behind the counter, holding something in her hand. It was the dress, the one Maya had picked, the one Karen said she didn't deserve. "I want you to have it," Olivia said softly. "No charge. It's the least we can do." Maya looked at the dress. It was beautiful. Deep blue, smooth as water, shimmering beneath the boutique lights. She loved it when she first saw it. But now it looked different. Not because it had changed, because she had. "No," Maya said gently but firmly. "I'll pay for it. With my own card, because I earned it. And I don't want it as a sorry. I want it as a reminder." Olivia swallowed hard and nodded. "Of course." Charles smiled just a little, watching his daughter with quiet pride. They walked to the register together. The room still silent. But now the silence had changed. It wasn't filled with shame anymore. It was filled with something heavier. Respect. Maya swiped her card, bagged the dress, and stood tall. Her back was straight, her chin lifted. She didn't say thank you to anyone who didn't deserve it. She didn't give hugs or smiles just to make people feel better about their discomfort. She simply said, "Let's go, Dad." And they walked out. Every eye followed them. Not because of what they wore or what they said, but because they had owned the room without ever needing to prove they belonged there. And as the boutique door closed behind them, one thing was clear. Karen's voice had been loud, but Maya's presence, it echoed longer. Long enough to leave a mark, long enough to change something, long enough to make sure that the next time someone like Karen raised her voice, someone else would finally raise theirs back. The sun was just starting to dip as Maya and her father stepped out of the boutique. Outside, the world looked normal. Cars moved past, people chatted on the sidewalks, children laughed in the distance. But Maya felt anything but normal. Her legs were moving, but her mind was still inside the boutique, echoing with accusations, shame, and strength. She clutched the shopping bag tightly, not because she was afraid someone would take it, but because it now meant more than a dress. It was proof that she stood her ground, proof that she belonged, proof that even when the world wanted her to shrink, she didn't. Charles opened the car door for her and waited until she got in before circling around to the driver's seat. He didn't speak right away. He could feel it. Maya's silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. She stared out the window, jaw set. Finally, he spoke. "You handled yourself well in there." She didn't respond. "You could have shouted. You could have cried. You could have left. But you didn't." Still, she said nothing. Charles turned the key in the ignition, but he didn't drive off. Instead, he looked at her, not as a CEO, not as a man with power, but as a father. "Maya, talk to me." And just like that, her walls cracked. I'm tired, Dad. The words were soft, but they cut deep. Tired of what happened today? He asked. She shook her head. Tired of what always happens. This time it was Karen. Next time it'll be someone else. A teacher, a cop, a stranger, someone in a restaurant, someone in a boardroom. Doesn't matter. It always shows up, like a shadow that follows me even when I do everything right. Charles exhaled slowly. You think I don't know that feeling? He asked. She turned to him, eyes sharp. You're the CEO. You walk into rooms and people stand. They listen. He nodded. Now, they do. But it wasn't always like that. She blinked. He had never talked much about the past. There was a time, he continued, when I wore second-hand suits to meetings, when security followed me in stores, when I'd walk into a building and people thought I was the janitor. Even after I signed the lease for my first boutique, the landlord asked if I was sure I could afford it. Maya's brows furrowed. You never told me that. I didn't want you to carry my battles. I wanted you to walk lighter. But I don't, she said. I feel every stare, every assumption, every time someone looks surprised when I speak well or dress nice or order the expensive thing on the menu. Charles nodded slowly. That's the weight of being both black and brilliant. Maya stared at him. People will doubt you just because of who you are, he said. Then they'll fear you the second you prove them wrong. But you don't dim your light to make them comfortable. She breathed in, deep and shaky. I wanted to scream at her, Dad. When she accused me, when the manager didn't defend me, I wanted to just... She broke off. But I didn't. I didn't want to be that girl, you know? The angry one. Charles looked at her. You don't owe them softness. What if I had shouted back? She asked. What if I had cried? Would it have changed anything? No, he said. And that's the cruel part. You can be graceful and they'll still doubt you. You can be furious and they'll still blame you. That's why you don't fight for their approval. You fight for your peace. Maya sat with that. Silence returned, but this time it wasn't bitter. It was reflective. She looked down at the bag in her lap. The dress she bought was now more than fabric. It was a memory stitched with pain and power. Promise me something, she said suddenly. Anything. Don't let them forget. Who? The boutique, she said. The staff. Olivia. Everyone who just watched it happen. Don't let it slide just because you showed up. Charles gave a slow nod. It's already being handled. Olivia's job may not be there next week. Maya blinked. You're firing her. I'm holding her accountable. If she's willing to grow, I'll give her the chance. But if she's just sorry because she got caught standing still, then yes, she's out. She nodded. I don't want pity, Maya said quietly. I want people to care even when no one's watching. Charles turned on the engine and pulled onto the street. You're stronger than I was at your age, he said. No, she replied. You just had to be strong in silence. I get to speak. He smiled faintly. Then speak, loudly, because there are girls watching you. Girls who look like you, think like you, dream like you, and they need to know they're allowed to exist fully too. Maya turned back to the window. They passed tall buildings. Some he owned, some he didn't. But each one stood because someone refused to bend. And Maya made a decision right there in the passenger seat of her father's car. This would not be her shame. It would be her fire. Let them stare. Let them whisper. Let them doubt. She'd keep walking, not because she wanted to prove them wrong, but because she already knew she was right. The ride home was quiet, But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that settles in when you've said everything that matters, and now your mind just wants to feel. Maya leaned her head against the window, watching the city blur past. Tall buildings, neon lights, people walking quickly. No one knowing what had just happened inside that boutique. No one seeing her. No one knowing what it cost her to stand still while someone tried to strip away her dignity, right there in front of everyone. Her phone buzzed in her lap. It was a message from her best friend, Ava. "You okay?" Maya stared at it. How do you answer that? How do you explain the quiet pain of being looked at like a thief just for existing? How do you explain the heat that rises to your face, not from guilt, but from humiliation, when someone decides you are the problem, even when you're not? She didn't reply. She just locked the screen and slid it back into her purse. Charles glanced over at her. "You know, the most dangerous kind of racism isn't always loud," he said gently. "It's polite, subtle, dressed in pearls and heels." Maya gave a half smile. "Yeah, like Karen. She's not the first, won't be the last," he said. But what she didn't expect was for the girl she humiliated to have power backing her. "Exactly," Maya whispered. She thought I'd stay quiet, that I'd leave, that I'd apologize for making her uncomfortable. She'd thought wrong. Maya sat up straighter, her spine no longer carrying just pain, but pride. That day she hadn't just survived something ugly. She'd owned it. And now it was hers to tell. Back at home, Charles walked ahead to take a call. Maya went to her room, laid the boutique bag on her bed, and stared at it. The dress inside was still perfect, but she realized something. This wasn't about the dress anymore. It was about who she became because of it. Her mind flashed back to Karen's words. They come in, make a scene, and leave with things that don't belong to them. Every syllable had dripped with the kind of poison that too many people learned to ignore. But not Maya. She'd felt every word. And worse, she knew Karen believed them. That's what made it sting. And yet, Maya didn't hate her. She pitied her. Because in the end, Karen walked away with nothing. Not the dress, not the power, not even her dignity. Maya reached into her closet and pulled out her journal, a soft black leather notebook she kept tucked away. She opened to a fresh page and began to write, not just what had happened, but how it made her feel. Not just the facts, but the fire, the rage, the triumph. Her handwriting was fast, almost messy, but she didn't stop. She wrote, "They always try to shrink us when we walk in proud. They always want us to lower our eyes, apologize without cause, and carry shame that was never ours. But I didn't, and I won't, because the color of my skin is not an invitation for judgment. It's a crown." She closed the journal softly and held it to her chest. Later that evening, Charles knocked gently and stepped inside. "You all right?" he asked. "I will be," she replied. "But this isn't over." He raised a brow. "What do you mean?" "I want to say something, publicly." Charles hesitated. "You sure you're ready for that?" She nodded. "People like Karen count on our silence. If I don't speak, someone else might think staying quiet is the only way to survive." He walked over, sat on the edge of her bed. "Then speak. I want to write about it. Everything. Post it. Do it." Maya smiled, feeling her power return. Not just because she'd survived the day, but because she refused to carry it alone. That night, she stayed up writing. Not just a social media post, but a statement. One by one, she laid out what happened. From the moment she entered the store, to the moment her father stood beside her. She didn't name the store. She didn't need to. What mattered was the message. She wrote about what it felt like to be falsely accused, to be treated like a criminal when she was just trying on a dress, to have her presence questioned, her innocence doubted, her humanity dismissed. But she also wrote about what came after, how her father showed up, how the truth silenced hate, and how her voice would never be small again. She posted it with a caption that read, "Your prejudice may speak louder, but my dignity will always last longer." She turned off her phone, placed it on her desk, and finally breathed easy. The next morning, Maya woke up to a flood of notifications, thousands of likes, hundreds of comments. People from all over the world had seen her post, and they felt it. Messages came in from girls who had gone through the same thing, women who had once been silenced but now felt seen, allies who promised to do better. And right in the middle of it all was a message that made her heart stop. "You don't know me, but my daughter went through something just like this. Thank you for speaking when so many of us couldn't." Maya sat there in bed, stunned. This wasn't just about her anymore. She had started something, and deep down she knew this moment wouldn't be forgotten, not because of who she was, but because she stood when silence was easier, because she stayed when walking out would have been safer, because she spoke when the world told her to be quiet. The post hadn't even been up for 24 hours and Maya's world had already shifted. She sat at the kitchen table, scrolling slowly through the hundreds, no, thousands of comments. Some were full of outrage. "This makes me sick. How is this still happening in 2025? I'm so sorry, Maya. You didn't deserve that. None of us do." Others were personal, raw confessions from people who had been silent too long. Reading this made me cry. I remember being 15 and followed around a store like a thief. "Thank you for saying what I never could. Your voice gave me mine back." Maya looked up from her phone, overwhelmed. Not in a bad way, but in the kind of way that happens when you realize something much bigger than you has just begun. Charles walked into the room holding 2 mugs of tea. He placed one gently in front of her and sat across from her. "You okay?" he asked. Maya nodded slowly. "I think so. I didn't expect people to care like this." He smiled gently. "People care more than you think. Most of them are just waiting for someone else to go first." She looked down at her mug. "It's strange. Yesterday I felt invisible. Today I feel like the whole world is looking at me." "They are. And you've earned that spotlight. Now, what you do with it, that's the real test." Maya thought about that. For the first time, she wasn't just someone on the receiving end of prejudice. She was becoming a voice, and voices, when used well, ripple. Suddenly her phone buzzed again. An email. Subject: boutique statement regarding incident involving Miss Maya Johnson. Her pulse quickened. She tapped it open and read, "We sincerely apologize for the events that took place at our location. We are actively reviewing our staff training protocols and investigating the matter. The employee involved has been placed under internal review, and we are committed to creating a space that is inclusive and respectful for all. No names, no accountability, just corporate fluff." Maya handed the phone to her dad. He read it silently, then passed it back. "What do you think?" she asked. He raised an eyebrow. "I think they're scared of losing money, not changing culture." Maya nodded. "I thought so too." That afternoon, Maya sat down to write again. This time, not a post, but but a letter. She wasn't done speaking. Not by a long shot. To the boutique that tried to silence me, I walked into your store to find a dress, but I walked out with something far more important: clarity. Clarity about how people like me are still treated, clarity about how silence is complicity, and clarity about the kind of world I want to help build. You don't get to wash this away with a generic apology, because what happened to me happens every day, to black girls, black boys, and people of color around the world. The difference is, this time someone watched, this time someone listened, this time someone spoke. But I'm not interested in your review process or carefully worded regrets. I want action. I want training that's real, not performative. I want your staff to understand bias isn't always screaming. It can whisper too. And when it does, it still wounds. I want you to look every black girl who walks through your doors in the eye and see her as worthy. Not suspicious, not threatening, not out of place, but human. And most of all, I want you to know I won't stop here. I'll keep telling the story. I'll keep saying my name, because this isn't about revenge. It's about responsibility. Yours and mine. Maya Johnson. She posted the letter to her page that night. By morning, it had gone viral. News outlets picked it up. Bloggers reposted it. Activists shared it. Celebrities commented. Schools, teachers, even strangers posted videos reading the letter aloud with tears in their eyes. Suddenly, Maya wasn't just a teenager who had been mistreated. She was a movement. The boutique's Instagram shut off comments. Their customer support inbox overflowed. And by the end of the week, they posted again. This time with names, with responsibility, with real change. Maya didn't ask for that power. She didn't plan to go viral. All she did was refuse to shrink. And the world noticed. Later that week, Maya sat on her balcony with Ava, her best friend. The sun was setting, the sky streaked with pink and gold. "I'm proud of you," Ava said, nudging her shoulder. "You could have just let it go." "I probably would have," Maya smiled softly. "I thought about it, but then I thought, if I stay silent, I'm giving Karen what she wanted." Ava nodded. "You gave her a lesson instead." They both laughed, but then Maya grew serious. "I don't want people to just praise me," she said. "I want them to look around at the things they let happen and finally say, 'Enough.'" "You're doing that," Ava said. "You already are." Maya sipped her tea and looked out over the horizon. There was still so much more to say, so much more to do. But for now, she had taken the first step. She had spoken up. She had stood firm. She had claimed her space, and for the first time, it felt like the world was finally listening. The sun dipped behind the clouds as the days passed, but Maya's fire had only grown brighter. What started as humiliation in a boutique had become a voice, and that voice was now everywhere. Her letter continued to spread like wildfire, appearing in classrooms, newsletters, protest signs, and magazine articles. People, especially young black girls, were reading her words and feeling seen for the first time. Maya didn't ask to be the symbol of a fight, but now that she had become one, she refused to back down. Still, with the attention came pressure. It wasn't all praise. Maya began to notice the comments that stung in a different way. Some people accused her of exaggerating. Others said she was playing the race card. A few even claimed she had ruined a good employee's life over a simple misunderstanding. Maya tried not to let it get to her, but sometimes late at night, those cruel words echoed louder than the praise. One evening, she sat on her bedroom floor, her back against the wall, knees pulled to her chest. Her phone was on the floor beside her. screen dark for the first time in days. The quiet around her didn't feel peaceful. It felt loud, like everything she was holding in had finally caught up to her. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "Am I really doing the right thing?" She wasn't looking for an answer. She was just exhausted from always being strong. Charles found her like that. He didn't ask questions. He just sat down next to her and waited. After a while, he said softly, "You're tired." She nodded, her eyes still closed. "It's okay to be tired, Maya. You've been carrying something heavy." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Some people think I made it all up," she said. "They think I wanted attention, that I ruined that woman's life for nothing." Charles didn't respond right away. He just breathed with her, letting the silence be comfort, not pressure. Then he said, "The truth doesn't need permission to be told. You didn't ruin anything. You revealed something." Maya opened her eyes and stared ahead. "Why does it feel like I have to be perfect just to be believed?" Charles turned to her. "Because the world was built that way. But that doesn't mean presence." "Talk to me," he said gently. Maya exhaled. "What if I mess up?" she whispered. "What if I say the wrong thing or stop being strong, or what if I just can't keep doing this?" Charles looked at her for a long moment, then said, "You're allowed to mess up. You're allowed to rest. Being strong doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It means you keep going even when it's hard." Maya nodded slowly, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I just don't want to disappoint anyone." Charles reached for her hand. "You've already given more than most people do in a lifetime. You don't owe anyone perfection. You've already changed the world in your own way. That's more than enough." The next day, Maya sat down at her desk and opened a blank page in her journal. Not for a post, not for a speech, just for herself. She started writing the truth, unfiltered and raw, about the fear, the strength, the exhaustion, the pride, the confusion, the weight of being seen, and the strange mix of joy and sadness that came with it. She wrote not to be heard, but to heal. And when she was done, she closed the book, hugged it to her chest, and let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Weeks later, Maya was invited to speak at a youth summit on racial justice. The stage was big, the lights were bright, the crowd was full of faces she didn't know. And yet, she wasn't nervous. Not this time. She stepped up to the podium, adjusted the mic, and looked out into the audience. She didn't read from notes. She didn't need to. "I'm not here to tell you I have it all figured out," she began. "Because I don't. I'm just a girl who walked into a store one day and came out with a story I never planned to tell. A story about being seen the wrong way, judged for things I never chose, and blamed for things I didn't do. But instead of walking away, I decided to speak." She paused, her voice clear and calm. "Not because I'm brave all the time, but because silence felt heavier than fear. And I knew that if I didn't speak, someone else would carry this alone." The room was quiet. No shifting chairs, no whispers, just stillness. "Maybe you've been that person," she continued. "The one who was followed in a store. The one who was questioned without cause. The one who was told, without words, that they didn't belong. If that's you, I want you to know, you do belong. And your story matters." She ended her speech to a standing ovation, but it wasn't the applause that mattered. It was the girl who waited after the event, holding a notebook in her hands, eyes wide and teary. She walked up to Maya and said, I used to think people like me didn't have a voice. But you proved we do. Maya hugged her tightly. You've always had a voice, she said. You just needed someone to remind you. Later that night, Maya and Charles walked side by side in the quiet, cool air. No cameras, no questions, just peace. You know, Charles said, you've become a lighthouse. Maya raised an eyebrow. A lighthouse? He smiled. You stand where it's dark and shines so others don't crash into the rocks. Maya laughed softly. Lighthouses get hit with waves a lot. He nodded. Yeah, but they never stop shining. And in that moment, Maya knew this journey wasn't about being loud or liked or even perfect. It was about light, about showing up again and again, even when the waves came hard, because every time she stood tall, another girl, somewhere, learned she could too. And that was worth everything. The boutique stood just as it had before. Clean windows, polished floors, bright lights pouring over racks of expensive clothing. From the outside, nothing seemed to have changed. But Maya knew better. She knew that behind those glass doors, everything was different now. Not because the shelves had moved or the staff had changed uniforms. Number It had changed because truth had walked in and silence had walked out. And she had been the one to carry that truth inside, uninvited, unannounced, and unapologetic. Months had passed since the day Maya stood in the center of that store, falsely accused and humiliated. The world had moved on, as it always does. News stories had taken over headlines. The comments slowed. The reposts faded. But Maya's world hadn't gone quiet. Not in the way people expected. Her story had planted seeds. She received letters from students in small towns who were starting conversations with their principals about anti-bias training. She had been asked to help write new guidelines for retail training at several companies. And most importantly, she was still standing, still speaking. One afternoon, Maya walked into her father's office. He was at his desk reading through reports, but when he saw her, he set them aside. What's on your mind? He asked. Maya sat down across from him. I've been thinking, she said, about how that one moment changed everything. Charles nodded. It did. She looked out the window, her voice soft. But I don't want it to end with that moment. I wanted to begin something. Charles leaned forward. What are you thinking? Maya took a breath. I want to start something of my own. A foundation for black girls and teens of color who've been silenced, judged, or made to feel like they don't belong. A place where they can tell their stories, get support, and learn how to stand tall, even when the world tries to shrink them. Her father didn't speak right away. He just looked at her with pride growing in his eyes. You want to build a place that helps others shine, he said. That's exactly who you are. Maya smiled. I'm going to call it the Belonging Project. And just like that, a new chapter began. The launch happened 6 weeks later. A community space opened in the city, a safe place with books, mentors, workshops, and resources. On opening day, girls from all over came, some with their parents, some alone, some nervous, some ready. But all of them walked through the doors with something in common: hope. Maya gave a short speech that day, but it wasn't about her. It was about them, about the girls who had been told to lower their voices, to shop in different stores, to not make it a big deal. Maya looked out at them and said, "You are not the problem. You are the answer. You are not too much. You are just enough. And you don't need permission to take up space. You already belong." As the applause filled the room, Maya's eyes locked with a young girl in the front row. She couldn't have been more than 9. Her hair in braids, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked up at Maya like she was looking at a mirror into the future. That single glance reminded Maya why this all mattered, why telling one truth could ripple into 1,000 others. Later that evening, when the guests had left and the lights were dimmed, Maya stood alone in the center of the space she had created. There were no cameras now, no headlines, just the quiet hum of a building filled with purpose. Her heart felt full in a way she couldn't explain. Because even though what happened in that boutique had wounded her, it had also awakened something fierce, something bright, something unshakable. Her dad appeared in the doorway, watching her. "You did it," he said. Maya turned toward him, her eyes soft. "No, we did it. You gave me the strength. I just finally used it." Charles walked up and put an arm around her shoulders. "You turned pain into power, Maya. Not everyone can do that." She leaned into him. "I just didn't want to carry it alone anymore." They stood there for a long time, 2 silhouettes against the soft glow of the room. Maya thought back to the day she had stood in that store, being treated like a criminal for simply existing. She remembered the shame, the disbelief, the sting of being judged before she'd even said a word. And then she remembered the way she refused to break, the way she had stood tall, even when her hands shook, the way her voice cut through the air like lightning. That girl still lived inside her, but now she was louder, stronger, free. Outside, the city lights flickered as the night deepened, but inside the Belonging Project, a different kind of light burned, steady, quiet, powerful. It was the light of a girl who refused to disappear. It was the light of truth. It was the light of change. And as long as that light burned, Maya knew she would never be alone again.